Afternoon.
Hey, hi Daniel. How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good, good, good.
Set up and organised.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Good. It's been a busy week.
Sure. Andy, how are you?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Where are we? Well, is that coming through?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a few more minutes before it kicks off.
Yeah.
Grab a coffee, grab a drink, do what you need to do. Oh, what's that in my hand there? Just on 4 o'clock, we'll give people some time to officially join at the official start time and try and get into it about maybe 5 past.
Yeah, makes sense.
everyone who's just joined, we'll just give everyone a few more moments to
about
get
5
online, and
minutes.
we'll kick off shortly. If you've got any questions or queries, now it's probably a good time to jump in. You've got a few minutes before we kick off. We can have a chat.
Yeah.
What I might do is probably we'll get into it. I think give everyone they can join in, and hopefully they'll join in during me speaking rather than you speaking. But I think we'll kick off and we'll get on with the show.
Cool.
So welcome everybody to today's user group meeting, the 31st of October. It is out of band for our usual meeting, but it is well worth the speaker who's been able to adjust to our time schedule this month. So we do really appreciate that, and thank you everyone for joining and taking time out in your afternoon. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Daniel Brown. I set up originally the Adelaide SharePoint user group, founded in 2019. Wow. No, it was actually founded in 2009. And eventually through the course of time, we've evolved into the 365 user group, the Office 365 user group, where we look at more how to use 365 and various bits and pieces. That being said, we generally meet on the third Tuesday of each month, February to November. So next month will be our last month for the year. And if you're looking to present somewhere, we're always looking for speakers. Local speakers are always great, but happy to do virtual. In this day and age, with Teams events, we can certainly connect no matter where we are. And in fact, we've had speakers all over from the world. And we've been going for 15 odd years. So if you're keen to speak, we're keen to hear you. What do we cover? Pretty much anything in the 365 area. Generally speaking, it's Teams, SharePoint, Flows, Forms, Power Apps, Power BI, the productivity collaboration suite of 365, so to speak. How I describe that to other people is generally we look at the portal.office.com rather than portal.azure.com, generally speaking. Bit of local news. Everyone has probably seen this doing the rounds, but Microsoft's set to invest $5 billion into Australia over the next couple of years. We're having some data centers, additional data centers built. None for SA, unfortunately, but we'll still get the extra capacity and computing power that goes with that, and I'm sure it's going to benefit everyone in the long run, and also certainly everyone here in AU. Microsoft OneDrive, the future of file management, is here. This event did happen almost a month ago. If anyone was around checking it out, OneDrive has changed dramatically, or is changing dramatically over the next few months, few years, particularly with a new UI, the integration into Outlook, meeting recordings being fully integrated, Copilot, as one might imagine, Copilot's going to pop up in various different places from now on. Colored favorites, simplified sharing and the interface and control, and the AI powered for you feature. There's a whole bunch more. I mean, I can fill up slides and slides and slides and take up a whole bunch of time, but OneDrive is certainly evolving, and it's certainly playing a bigger and bigger role in the whole collaboration space. I mean, as it should, it does definitely have its place, but not holding finance documents, but certainly in the development of them and drafts and things, it's certainly worthwhile being across OneDrive for these sort of things of where it's going. So, for example, the new OneDrive Home, just quickly, various bits and pieces that are coming forward. As you can see, it's very Windows 11-y, which I kind of like the look and feel of Windows 11. I've been running it for quite some time, and it's very modern, and we go from there. Various bits and pieces and teams, how it's coming through. These are all stolen from the Microsoft blog post, but feel free to check it out. There's a whole bunch of information and detail there and what's coming, so definitely keep an eye out in the message center for those changes as they filter through. Microsoft Ignite, 14th to 17th of October in Seattle for anyone who's going. Check out the website. Very good event. Definitely worthwhile going if you've never been. But I'm sure if you can't go, the content will definitely filter through, and there'll be a whole bunch of cool announcements and bits and pieces coming out of it. Copilot, everyone's favorite topic at the moment. Copilot's coming left and right and everywhere, and very, very cool. As we did see a while ago, Microsoft pricing, I'll have to confirm if this is still the pricing for it, but roughly about $30 USD. That was announced back in July.
I think we lost your audio, Daniel. I don't know if you're speaking. Be on mute, Daniel. We don't hear you.
Testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm not sure what happened there. Teams I just changed the devices and it picked it up again. Copilot release. I think that's roughly where I dropped out. Check it out tomorrow-ish. Depends on time zones and things like that. We'll definitely be seeing that come through for 365 Copilot for the enterprise. Very excited to see this come through. That being said, Big Chat Enterprise, worthwhile having a look at that as well. Dog barking in the background. But Big Chat is also powered by the AI engine in the back end as well. ACSC, the European SharePoint Conference. I've got a couple more slides. We'll jump into it. I'll skip through these really quick. Worthwhile checking out. Very big conference this year, so worthwhile going as well. The Power Platform Conference next year. I'm just getting the word out quickly and early. Check it out. As this approaches, we'll have more and more bits and pieces that are coming out. Azure AD, as Microsoft has heard, is now Entra ID. This is pretty much old news now, but I just include this slide now just for any newcomers who have come and not too sure. Microsoft Fabric, a whole bunch of stuff there. For those of you who haven't seen Fabric, because we're just having a quick look at it now. 30 days to learn it challenge as well. I've been doing a whole bunch of these. If you haven't seen it, go to learn.microsoft.com. The link's there for the 30-day challenges as well. Really good content. I did the Copilot for the enterprise yesterday, and it was really good. So worthwhile, check it out. Support for the various SharePoint platforms has ended, so definitely get your planning now. And 2016 to 2019 are ending, so yeah, get it on the plan. Various updates as well. Check out Stefan's blog. For those of you unaware, of course, IE11 is dead, although there are servers with it. I also include test your backups for everyone. Everyone does say, yes, we've got backups going. They back up, but do they restore? So every so often, please include a test of your backups. And likewise with the UPS, it's always good to chuck that in a test as well. Various other local user groups around Adelaide. We've got a few. Definitely worthwhile checking them out and lending your support to those groups as well. And now we've got our speaker, Merill from Microsoft. Merill, am I pronouncing that correctly, Merill?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Who will be presenting on implementing the ACSC's Essential 8 MFA with Microsoft 365 and Entra. We did this topic because obviously the cybersecurity is playing a huge role lately in all aspects of business and life and personal and everything. So it's definitely worthwhile checking this out. So I shall hand over to Merill now.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Hey, folks. So Fernando here. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft.
I'll let you introduce yourself officially
yeah.
and formally.
Yeah. So I'm a principal product manager in the Microsoft Entra team.
I can't hear you now. Sorry.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? Hi. Can anyone else hear me, or is it just?
Yes.
Give me maybe. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. I think maybe Daniel. Is it just you that can't hear? Cool. All right. So just feel free to come off mute. I think there are just only a few of us. If you have any queries. So my name is Fernando. I'm product manager. I live in Melbourne, but I work with customers in Australia and a few globally. And I work closely with the team in Redmond in the Entra ID space. So today's session is all about multi-factor authentication, and I'll be walking you through the ACSC's Essential 8 MFA. We published docs. We work closely with the ACSC and published docs in Microsoft Learn, specifically targeting MFA. So what I'm going to do is walk you through that and maybe give you some demos as well on why MFA is important. So let me go here. Right. So the ACSC defines the maturity levels. They have lots of different pillars. I'm only focusing on MFA today. So with MFA, there are different levels that are defined in the ACSC maturity levels. You can go from maturity level 0 to 1 to 2 and 3, and we're going to look at what each of them mean and what the difference is. This is a requirement, I believe, for all like federal organizations and even government orgs are now doing those checks, and enterprise organizations are implementing these maturity levels to make sure they protect their data and their customer data, right, in this modern world that we live in. So maturity level 0, and I think of this diagram, I've shown some pictures here. It's sort of when you're living in a house, if you're living in a tent, which has very little security, that's sort of like maturity level 0 for when you're having MFA. Maturity level 1 gives you some protection. It protects you from opportunistic attacks. Say someone runs a phishing or not a phishing, like a password spray, and maturity level 1 helps block you from those. When you get to maturity level 2, you're protecting your organization tenant from people who can target your organization or your customer and try to compromise the identities of those users. And maturity level 3 is for like very sophisticated sort of attackers, maybe even nation states and others who are trying to target them. So that's what each level is trying to protect. And the ACSC's goal is to get organizations to move from where they are, first to assess where they are in this maturity level, and then just to move to the next maturity level. So it's not about trying to get to maturity level 3 on day 1, but it's all about moving their posture as a journey from one to the other. Right. So feel free to interrupt and ask me any questions as we go. Right. So to talk about the different maturity levels and what they mean, right? Maturity level 0, I'll come to that when I talk about the different channels. There are 2 aspects for the maturity levels when it comes to MFA. The first one is what sort of authentication methods are you allowed to use for multi-factor authentication, right? So with maturity level 1, you are basically able to use any authentication option, right? You can use password and voice, password and SMS. You can use the Microsoft Authenticate app with passwordless. You can use hardware tokens, the ones that you have with the banks that we used to have all the time, or with the old VPN access, where the number would come up. Those all fall under maturity level 2. And then you can use Hello for Business and all of that. So when you're saying maturity level 1, everything can be used. Now, once you get to maturity level 2, if an organization says, okay, I want to move to the next level, then they need to stop using password plus voice and SMS. So having the token delivered over the phone, whether it's a callback that comes through or an SMS, it's considered weak because it was built in the 70s. Anyone can easily get your SMS text messages, right? So maybe someone who is in your vicinity, they can have these devices that can listen in on all SMS messages. Or if they are near the cell tower that you're in, they don't even need to be near your house. If they are near the cell tower, they can read all of the messages that are going through that tower. So those tokens that are sent over SMS can be easily accessed by an attacker. And then we have issues related to porting, right? Anyone can easily port. Like in Australia, if you're on like a SIM plan, all I need is your name and date of birth, and I can port. There are some protections now where there's sort of confirmation someone has to give, but even with those, it's fairly easy to port somebody's phone and take over their phone, and then get access to lots of their accounts that use that code. So to get to maturity level 2 in your organization, you need to move off password with voice and password with SMS. So that's a big ask for a lot of organizations who are even struggling to get to implementing the first level, right? So, but that's a key distinction if you want to get to that level of maturity. If you have any questions around this, please feel free to ask. Now, some organizations, like I've spoken with the ACSC, some have said we want to be maturity level 2, but still use voice and SMS. Then what the ACSC says, it's more like a guidance. You can have a risk register, right? Your CISO, your cybersecurity team can have a risk register where they call out what sort of mitigations they put in place. So one customer is working with, what they do is they only allow phones that are part of a plan, like company phone numbers, to be registered for voice and SMS. So they have protection against someone porting over the number and taking that. So if you can put in some other mitigations or controls in place, then you can call that out and say you can still use voice and SMS and say that you are at maturity level 2, as long as you have some of those mitigations. MFA push notifications. Yeah, so that's when we come to maturity level 2. So at maturity level 2, you basically move off voice and SMS, but you can use everything else. Now, maturity level 2 is good, but it is still not phishing resistant. So what that means is, and I'll show you a demo of how someone can be phished with a phishing attack, and it's very easy to get phishing attacks done today. People can just go to Telegram, find a channel, and they can pay someone online, and they'll give them a phishing link. Like, you don't need to even have a technical knowledge. You can just get up someone will spin up the site for you. They do it as a service, right? And you just need to pay them, and they give you a link. You send it to your target, and then if whoever your target user clicks on that link and types in the username, password, and stuff, you will have access to all those all of those credentials easily, right? So without you having to go stand up servers and things like that, it's now provided as a service to attackers. So these things in maturity level 2, while they're better than just password and voice, they can still be compromised. It's a bit harder. It raises the bar a little, but it can still be compromised if your users click on a link and they can be phished to give away that. And I'll give you a demo to show what happens with that. So maturity level 3 is moving to authentication methods that are phishing resistant. So this is even if your users see a link and they click the link, it's a phishing link, they type in their username and like they try to log in, they won't be able to log in because these mechanisms are based on phishing resistance. So they will prevent any sort of man in the middle attack. They'll prevent the authentication from completing and for the attacker to take any of the tokens. Basically, they're all sort of passwordless. There is no password involved in this flow. So I see a question from Aaron. Are MFA push notifications considered, to vulnerable attacks? So if you remember Microsoft Entra, Microsoft Azure AD, we used to have an approve yes, no before. So what happened was attackers would get the username and the password, and they would just spam users with the MFA prompt by just typing in the username, password, logging in, and sending an MFA prompt to the user. And all it took for the user was to accidentally say yes, either intentionally or accidentally, or if they've given the phone to their kid to play something, they see a pop-up, they just hit yes. And now the attacker had a valid session for the user. So that's one reason why we moved away, like from Microsoft, the authenticator sign-in, we moved away from that to typing in a number. So unless you could see the screen, you didn't know what number to type in, you couldn't just give it away. Right, so that's one of the improvements we did. Right, so that's moving off into maturity level 3, and I'll give you a demo. Maybe I might do the demo now just to show you how that works. Right, so I'm using an open source tool. This is used to teach people about man in the middle attacks called Evil Jinx. Now I've set that up on this machine here. What it lets me do is it gives me a link that I can use to send to my victim, right? So I can send it as an SMS or a Teams message or in some sort of phishing email. I'll have the link, and when the user clicks on it, so let me open like a private session, right? So I send it to the user, they click on the link, and when they click on the link, what they see is a valid Microsoft login page. Right now, what is happening is you can see here, this is sitting in the middle between the Microsoft website and my browser, and it is recording everything that's going on between the two, between Microsoft and the login page on the browser, right? So even if I do something like I go to my, let me go, this is one of my demo users. Right, so I have a custom login page with my logo and all of that to let users know about to make sure they're not typing into the wrong page. But this man in the middle is able to take that same page, the same logos, my customized even the buttons and CSS, and sort of mirror it back, right? So you can see from the URL that it's actually a different domain. It's not login.microsoftonline.com, right? It's slightly different, but it's basically sitting in the middle and replaying everything that I see there. So let me type in my password for this user, which should be this one, right? So I type in the password and I click sign in, and you can see here it's recording. You can see all the requests that are coming. It's recording that. So I'm doing an MFA. Now this is using the Authenticate app. So I type in my password and I'll approve the request here. once it comes through. So I'm using number match, right? So I type in the number, and the user is thinking that they're signing into sort of a valid website, and they sign in. Now at this point, it looks like the page is broken, but for the attacker, you can see all tokens have been intercepted, right? So the man in the middle attack who was attacking has been able to compromise. So if I see the sessions, I can see for this user, right? So this user Diego, if I display that session, you can see now the attacker knows the username, the password, and he's got the cookie information, right? So he can use the username and password in the future and be able to get in as that user. So like even this cookie, right? So the attacker, since they have the cookie, they can copy it, and I'll show you how I can use it, right? So let me go to a browser that I'm running. This is on a completely different machine, right? And I will go to the settings just to make sure, show you that, there is no data here. I'll clear the cache, right? I'll clear everything. So it's like a clean, empty session. And I'm going to use a tool called a cookie editor, where I'll copy this cookie that I captured from the user session. I'll copy that cookie and paste it in here. And if I go to portal.office.com, you can see it goes through the login page. So it was a completely cleared browser session. There's nothing there, but I'm now logged in as this user, right? So I can go into their OneDrive, go into Office 365. I didn't need to give a username or password. I just copied the cookie in, and I basically got into their session, right? So this is how an attack will happen. Even if you have MFA, without MFA, it's fairly easy, right? So if you didn't have MFA, the attacker can just use this at any time, right? With MFA, the bar is raised a bit because they can only use the cookie to get in, and this cookie is valid for maybe an hour, right? There's an expiration on it, so they'll need to fish the user again, or make them approve the MFA. So it's doing maturity level 2 does improve it. The attack only has like one window of like an hour, for example, to attack. But if you don't have MFA, the account is completely compromised. Until the password is reset, they'll know the password. And what happens when your organization makes you change your password every 90 days? Most people use the same password, right? And then they just change the number. So it's not a big deal for the attacker to guess what the next number is going to be, right? So that's why these maturity levels, they make it harder at each level. And if I were using a certificate-based auth, this entire flow will be broken. It will not let me complete, because the cert looks for, when I use a 502 or Hello for Business, if the domain doesn't match what is in the 502 key, it will block the sign-in from happening. Right? It won't complete the sign-in flow. So that's where the maturity levels come in and help protect your users. Is that clear? Any questions on like the demo? Any queries you have? Cool, awesome. So with the maturity levels, I'm now going to cover what each of them mean, right? So at maturity level 0, it's basically you have single factor authentication or multi-factor authentication for your users when they access, whether it's third-party apps like Microsoft 365, OneDrive, or Salesforce, SuccessFactors, anything that's hosted in the cloud, or even accessing your own like internal applications that maybe you might have built. You have MFA for some people, or you exclude MFA if they're coming in from your local network. Then you're basically classed as maturity level 0, right? So if the users are coming in over the internet, they're at home and they're signing in, maybe you have MFA, maybe you don't. And that maturity level there is called maturity level 0. So this is non-internet facing applications. Customer access is included as part of the ACSC maturity levels. These are, for example, if you're like a Kmart or a Telstra and you have users logging in to your portal to order things, then that's the customer MFA maturity level as well. So that's all included in the definition. Now at maturity level 0, as we described before, you can use any of the authentication methods. So if your organization is in this place, your maturity level is 0, right? Where MFA is optional, where MFA is applied to some people but not others, or maybe MFA is only applied if you're coming in over the internet and no MFA if you're on the local network, right? So if any of that is true, then your organization or that tenant is at maturity level 0. Right, now to get to maturity level 1, any application that is internet facing, you have MFA required. It's compulsory. Like there are no exceptions to the rule. Whether you're on the local network signing into these applications, or whether you're outside, signing in from home, and MFA is being applied, that is maturity level 1, right? So you have MFA everywhere, and you can use any sort of authentication methods. That is maturity level 1. So this is a big challenge for some large organizations, right? Maybe users, not all of your users can be enforced with MFA. Maybe some people say they cannot use their personal phone, be forced to use their personal phone to do an MFA. Or you have challenges like in the retail sector, like the employees cannot take their phone into the shop floor, for example, so they can't complete MFA. So those are challenges that need to be addressed, where you can't just use simple things like SMS voice. You need to plan it out better and think of how other ways that you can implement MFA for them, right? So at maturity level 1, the biggest difference is this. You go from MFA being optional to MFA being required everywhere across the board without any exceptions. But the key thing is it's only applied to internet-facing applications, right? So things like M365, Salesforce, SuccessFactors, anything that's in the cloud. If you have apps that are on-prem, you have like your local RDP session, those are optional, right? So at maturity level 1, it is recommended, but you don't lose points just because you don't have that, right? For consumers, it's always optional, so leave that. Next, we go to maturity level 2. With maturity level 2, the big change that comes is it's the same MFA everywhere, but the difference is for admins, you have to have MFA applied for privileged users. So non-privileged is still optional, but for privileged users, if they're accessing anything on-prem, like for admin related work, right? Say you're signing into a domain controller, you're signing into an RDP session on your customer database or something, right? So you need to decide which of those are the sensitive data, and all admin access to those data sources need to have MFA enforced on them, right? It's a bit of a challenge with the legacy protocols because there is no MFA available out of the box. You will need most of the time like some sort of third-party option or a plugin to implement MFA for domain control or RDP sessions and so on. Right, so that's one important change there. At maturity level 2, that's sort of the biggest change. And the other big change, as we discussed before at maturity level 2, is that SMS and voice need to be taken off. You need to move your users to using the Authenticate app instead of using SMS and voice. So you basically need to block that access for users. So that is maturity level 2. We've added controls in Microsoft Entra for this, and I'll walk through how those settings can be done. Any queries on this on maturity level 2? Cool, awesome. Next, we get to maturity level 3. And here, in terms of the access, it's more or less the same. But here we say even for normal users, if they're accessing important data stores that are hosted on-prem, maybe some SQL servers that have very sensitive data, etc., then you need to apply MFA for them. And the other big change is the type of authenticate options that you can use. It takes out all of anything that is phishable will be removed, right? So you can only use phishing resistant MFA, which is like things like Windows Hello for Business, FIDO2, and certificate-based auth, right? So those are the only authenticate options that are available at maturity level 3. So that's basically a high-level overview of maturity levels 1, 2, and 3 and what you can use. In the next few, I'm just going to quickly walk you through how to configure these things using Microsoft Azure AD or Entra ID. So at maturity level 1, you need to define a conditional access policy, something like this, that says all users, all cloud apps. You can exclude things that are not internet facing. If they're on-prem applications like these apps, you can exclude them. But other than that, you should not have any conditions. So you can't say things like, if they're in my corporate network, exclude. You can't do any exemptions that way, right? If you do those, then you are basically maturity level 0. It's not maturity level 1, right? So to get to maturity level 1, you need to implement a conditional access policy like this. To get to maturity level 2, you need to include everything in maturity level 1 plus a new policy that says for all privileged users, like these users, and applied for all cloud apps, they need to have MFA. So you can't exclude on-prem apps if they're integrated from the MFA policy. Next, at maturity level 3, you'll need to include all users, and you can include all cloud apps, and you can exclude non-sensitive apps, but anything that has important data, and that's up to your discretion, as you as the organization can define what is sensitive and non-sensitive, and you'll need to then implement MFA for those, for access to those systems. Right, so that is what the ACSC recommends, and what we at Microsoft do recommend is to, and we saw how MFA is phishable, right? So instead of doing just the most extreme maturity level 3, which is removing a lot of the authentication options, which takes a lot of effort to move users to those secure ones, and it's also expensive. Like if you're deploying FIDO2 security keys, you need to buy a key or 2 keys for each person for them to be able to move to those passwordless options. Something that is much better that you can deploy today to be phishing resistant is to require devices to be marked as compliant or require hybrid Azure AD join. So if you have those, then that will also break the phishing resistance, because the sign-in flow looks for a certificate, and if there's a man in the middle, that certificate handshake fails, and it will block the sign-in from happening. So if you turn those checkboxes on in the conditional access policy, then it'll give you that protection as well. Right, so that's one thing to recommend. So we were talking about how as you move to the maturity levels, you cannot use certain authentication strengths. So what you can do is with Entra, like with conditional access and this feature called authentication strength, you can actually define the different authentication strengths. So I've given you some screenshots of how to define it. At maturity level 1, you can select all of the options available for authentication strength. But for maturity level 2, you'll basically need to turn off password SMS and these things that are not allowed for maturity level 2. And the same way as you move to maturity level 3, you need to turn off a lot more of these and only enable these options for allowing users to sign in, right? So you can define these, and then in the conditional access policy, you say which maturity level you want to use, and then users can only sign in with that. Right now, all of this is basically a journey for any organization, So the way I have seen it implemented is you basically start with a small core set of users, usually people in the IT team, and then roll it out across the board over time, right? So that gives you a way to test things out, help your help desk team learn about the different authentication methods and move through to the more secure ones. One of the other requirements at maturity level 2 and 3 is that logging needs to be enabled. Now, this is an easy one to meet with Microsoft Entra AD because logging is enabled by default out of the box, and you can use that. The other requirement at maturity level 3 is you must have active monitoring. So you need to have an operations team. You can use features like identity protection that will remediate based on sign-in risk, right? If passwords were leaked online, these can be used to reset the password automatically. Cool. So that, I hope, gave you an overview about the ACSC Essential 8 and the maturity levels. Any questions, queries on the Essential 8? Have any of you implemented Essential 8 or implemented an MFA program? So how should, the one question Aaron asks, how should we manage service accounts that cannot have or support MFA? Right, so the first thing there is ideally for cloud-based services, today you shouldn't need service accounts because everything that can be done through the APIs, you have Microsoft Graph API and you have a different model of authentication using certificates and so on for app-based access. So what we recommend is if you have vendors or devices, you move them to using the API. Like that is the right way to move, right? But there are some vendors who have legacy applications. They don't want to rewrite the app to use those APIs. For now, you'll need to have them in sort of like a risk register and exclude them from the conditional access policies, but you should have it listed in your risk register and have a plan for, how to take them off over time, how to deprecate those features. So you'll need to work with the vendors and move them. So this is an industry-wide effort as well. So that's the recommendation, right? And you should have a policy. So when you onboard new products, if they require service accounts, that should be sort of like a no. You should say, I'm going to pick a vendor that's more secure by default, right? So that's the question for what you raised, Aaron. Are there modules for this one? So there, we don't have modules, but we do have, I think, ak.ms/e8 that will take you to the docs for Essential 8. So I'll share that. If you go to ak.ms/e8, we have not just MFA, but there are all the different pillars, right? So MFA is just listed here, and it's mostly like what I've walked you through about. It goes into detail about how to configure each of them, what the maturity levels are. So it's mostly the same content, and we walk you through how it also aligns with ISM and those controls that are applied there, right? So that's Scott has a question. Pin complexity is a massive key component at the end of the day. Right. So one of the things that people don't realize with Windows Hello for Business, it is phishing resistant. The pin is actually it's not the equivalent of a password, right? So Hello for Business is very strong. It's very secure because it is phishing resistant. What happens with almost all of those phishing resistant is there is a private key that's used when you register your authenticator method. The private key never leaves the device, and it's actually bound to the physical TPM chip on your device. The private key is always there. What happens is, as part of the sign-in flow, the server sends like a nonce, like some string, the client has to use the TP private key and do an encryption of that string. Then on the server side, Azure AD will know, okay, only this person has this physical device that is able to do this encryption because at that initial time it's verified, right? So the PIN is only used to unlock the key locally, right? Unlike the password, now in this my example, phishing example, I got the username and password, right? You can go to any machine and use this username and password, you can get in. Whereas with Windows Hello, the PIN is not usable unless you have the physical device, right? So the threat factor is very different. Like nobody can remotely from another country sign in as you by taking your Hello for Business. They need to come and physically steal your laptop from you and then get the PIN out of you and then be able to sign in, right? So most of these attacks, 98% all remote attacks, and phishing resistant is all about that threat factor, right? Now, if someone is coming physically and trying to take your laptop and sign in with your PIN, that's a different threat factor. And there are other things that you need to worry about then. But this is meant more for remote attacks. So the PIN itself is useless without the physical device. Right. So the technology itself is what gives that phishing resistance to that flow. Cool. Awesome. Yes, yeah. So there are other factors that someone can do, right? Like social engineering, which is why phishing is easy for attackers. They can spray a large number. Um, it- Look, attacks will always be there, but it's the cost to the person who's doing the attack that's different, right? With social engineering, like calling the help desk or like calling a person, while that can still be done, the attacker is doing just a one-on-one with whoever the victim is. Whereas with phishing, I can send like thousands of email links out to an entire company. All it takes is one person to click on the link, and I don't need to be spending my time as an attacker, right? It all gets logged. I can go in and see. So the cost for the attack is a lot more with the social engineering, and that's a different threat factor. Like it's a different way that you need to address those. So these are not like 100% proof that they'll block everything, but these are ways to make it harder for an attacker to get into your organization by doing something remotely and from a remote location, right? So in cybersecurity, there are like, what is the cost for an attacker? And as you move from just password to MFA, you increase the cost. As you move from weak MFA to strong MFA, like from SMS to authenticate app, it makes it a bit more harder. Moving into phishing resistant makes it even more harder. That doesn't mean all these attacks will stop. There will be new things that they will try, right? Now, as we move everyone over, there are new attacks that come where they try to steal more of these tokens. They try other ways to get the tokens, but it is a lot harder than just getting the username and password, right? So that's the key thing to remember. Tools like TeamViewer and so on. Yes, I mean, you should have security controls. And if you look in the Essential 8, there are those other pillars that they have, right? So some of those are user application hardening, and there's another pillar called app control, which says what sort of apps the users are allowed to have on the device. So these, for each maturity level, you need to implement those things to make sure you improve that security. For the SMB market, I guess SMB, almost everyone, if you can get to maturity level 1, from 0 to 1, which is applying MFA everywhere, that is a big jump from where a lot of organizations are at the moment, right? So forget about 2 and 3, just get to level 1 for the entire organization, roll out MFA, allow users to use any sort of MFA as you start, because it's all about just getting them through that flow, right? So it's about assessing each organization where you are and then moving to the next level in maturity. Cool. Awesome. Any other questions?
Feel free if anyone's got any other questions to ask. If not, I'm sure Merill will answer anything on LinkedIn or any emails or anything like that. Happy to. Sure, he's happy to. On that note, unless Merill, you've got anything else?
Nope. That is all good. Thanks so much, and thanks for all the questions. Hope you found this useful.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon. Greatly appreciated, and certainly with the rescheduling as well. So hugely appreciated.
Cheers. All right, folks.
Quick shout out to our sponsors, Microsoft, although we've got to get back into the office, and Archognosis for my time and organising the 365 invites and everything like that. Check us out on social media, mainly active on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you don't follow us there, we've got groups and various things. And thank you to everyone who attended this afternoon's meeting. I know we've had a little bit of a reschedule play with it. But I really do appreciate everyone's time and effort in coming together and having a chat around this, because I think it's an important topic to really get everyone across.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Folks.
I believe the meeting recording will be available soon. So as soon as it is, I'll post it up and we'll go from there. So thank you again.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you, everyone.